Welcome to the Couple on Fire podcast. On today's episode, we're going to talk all about how to work with your spouse, and that's coming up
right now.
Thank you for joining us on this wonderful episode. Hey, if you guys are just now joining us, or maybe you were here last week, we didn't get a new French door put in, okay? That is a backdrop, my friends, okay? We are trying to flex and move with this whole change. Guys, we have changed a major format of our podcast in general, so if you're curious about that, you can go to the previous episode if you haven't listened or watched that one yet and get kind of caught up on that. But today we're really going to talk all about what it's like working with your spouse. That's something that's brand new for Kristy and I. But before we jump kind of into that, this is about 15 minutes long, is about what we do for bite-sized podcast episodes now. And is there anything you want to talk about real quick before we dive in?
No, I do want to encourage people to go back. And those of you maybe that want updates, with what's going on with us, we don't want to take our podcast to go to every single time giving an update when, that's not what this is about. We want to give encouragement to you guys for being in a blended family, marriage, Christianity, all of those types of things. That's what we would rather do. But if you definitely want an update on what's going on with us, we'd be more than willing to give it to you. So go back. Can we pin it or anything at the top of like a website or YouTube or anything like that? Do they do anything like that?
I don't know. I could probably go through and find a link and add it or something. Probably do all that extra work. I'll have Kristy do that, actually.
No.
We'll have Kristy do that.
No. Again, this is working together. That's what we're about to talk about.
Isn't that easy to do? You should just do
that. You're the tech guy. Lord.
Is it easier? No, it's fine. We'll figure it out. We're going to solve this problem is what we'll do.
But no, there really isn't anything besides, Josh and I are in a new season and we are learning right now until I find a job this is my job, working with him.
Yeah. Well, working together, really honestly, this is something that we're kind of learning together is everybody has their own strengths and their own weaknesses, and understanding what you are weak at and being humble enough to say, hey, this is something that I'm not strong at, especially if you're somebody that's maybe kind of just done things by yourself for a long time, which has been me. And Kristy's always been a leader in a lead position to guide and lead everybody that she's been part of in a different type of team. And so we're trying to figure out how to meld that stuff together. And for me, I think that the number one thing that I've realized so far is just being able to have some humility in the things that I don't know and being willing to say, hey, maybe this is a great spot for her to come in with her strengths and fill this gap.
Yeah, him and I were talking about this a couple days ago, actually, when we were going on a walk, and he's the one that brought it up and said, I don't think that we would be moving forward as quickly as we're moving forward with, the content and stuff that we're creating if it wasn't for my strengths and your strengths coming together. And we didn't come to this, over the last month easily like, oh, this is your strength, you're so awesome, and this is your strength, and please do this for me. That was not the way that it was. I had to take a step back. Like Josh said, I've been a leader in my career for over 20 years. I've been in some type of leadership management role. And what happened is Josh had his own thing going for a couple weeks, and then I lost my job. I come home and I jump in without him asking me. So when we started kind of like I think it's important in your marriage to take a step back and reflect, what responsibility did I have in that to cause that reaction in my spouse? And I could sit all day long and be like, he is not regimented. He's not this, he's not that. But did he ask me to do any of this? Did he ask me to create a plan and to just say, okay, Josh, this is your weekly schedule and this is, you do this and this and this? No, he never did. Like I just jumped in, created all this stuff, and then was getting upset trying to because he wasn't adhering to my schedule. And so we had to sit down and really talk about it. But I had to sort of self-reflect and say, he's not asking me to do this. This is his thing. And he has it more under control and he can manage it however he wants to manage it. And that's what caused us to kind of the walls to come down.
Yeah.
I wasn't trying to punch my way through. I was reflecting to say and saying, I'm sorry. Like, you didn't ask me to do this, and I should take a step back.
Yeah, and I think it's important that you guys understand, like, when big things change in life and you do end up doing something or working with your spouse, even if it's like doing, you guys decide to do a hobby together moving forward, whatever this type of work collaboration is that maybe you've always just done it one way. And I think this really kind of goes back
Mm,
to blended families. You know, we've always done something a certain way and we found success in it, right? So we're able to get into this industry thing that we're now doing together because of what I did, right?
yeah.
What Josh did and the way that I did it, right? So
Yeah.
it's real easy for me now to have an ego of, well, apparently I know what I'm doing because I did it and there here we
Which is
are.
true.
Right? Which is easy to do that, right? But let's be honest, guys, we don't know everything as much as a lot of times we can say, look where I'm at, look what I've done. But I want to be in collaboration with my wife on everything that I do in life. And my wife just came home. Like, how crappy of a spouse do I have to be to say, you just go over there and sit in the corner and you go look for your jobs while I continue to do this? Okay. That is such a crappy thing. And ultimately, God doesn't want that from me, from her, or from you to do that in our relationship. I want to be collaborative with my wife. And so I got to say to myself, okay, how can she come into this and make this better, make me better? And what can we do and how can we embrace that? Well, number one, it's for me to be humble about it, right? It's not about me. It's about us glorifying God and whatever it is that we do. And the best way that Kristy and I do that is because of our marriage and our decision to come together. And so it has nothing to do with working together. It has none of that stuff. It has everything to do with how are we going to become one like God has called us to be in marriage. And the best way to do that is for me as her husband to humble myself and then allow her to shine in her place so we can shine together.
And I think that what we're talking about, though, to be able to work together as spouses can go to any type of situation. I hear so many young moms, I've talked to a lot of young moms that are like, he doesn't offer to help change the baby's diaper and do the dishes, and I'm breastfeeding, and he could be vacuuming and doing all these things. But then if you went and talked to the spouse, they would be like, every time I try to offer to help, I'm not doing it right. They tell me just to stop,
Yeah.
or the baby is their responsibility, and they want me to step away. But then if I try to do the dishes, I'm not doing them correctly, or I'm not putting them away correctly. And and I can speak from a woman's standpoint because it's so true. We can be so hypercritical about our expectations
Mhm.
of the kids and the house and all of these types of things, but then we're also upset when the man doesn't help. Well, if we're just constantly criticizing them every time they go to do something, I've really been convicted from the Holy Spirit over the past 15 years because he has stayed at home and I have worked. It's been like over the first couple years, I'm like, oh my gosh, why isn't this done? Why isn't this done? He's handling the house just fine. That house actually looks really good. Just because he doesn't scrub the baseboards or get the dust off the baseboards does not mean that he's not doing it. And if I stayed at home and he worked, the baseboards might be clean, but the fridge door handle would probably have fingerprints all over it. And he's constantly wiping down the fridge and getting the fingerprints off the fridge. And that's something that I might not do. So this has taken the last month or even the last week to really sit down and reflect to each other, like, you are really strong in these types of areas. You are so good at it. And I am really good in these areas. How can we meld them together instead of just being like, this is where I'm really good at and you suck at it. You need to get better at this
Yeah.
and you would do better.
Yeah.
We need to come together and do it together.
Yeah. And it's hard, especially later in life when we're, in an unfortunate situation, but I'm feeling like this is a lot less unfortunate and a lot more fortunate, to be honest with you guys. Like, we've been put in this position because of something that feels tragic. I actually shared this from stage on Sunday at church when I get up to the announcements. A lot of times we have something happens in our life and we think that it's tragic, but then we realize that God was trying to do something bigger through it. And maybe this is God trying to strengthen us as a team together to be able to do something together, which we've been praying for the last 12 years, do together in a way that we didn't expect. And this, to me, in the last couple weeks has been actually really good. Somebody said something today about being Christy's home all the time. And I thought to myself, I'm like, I've never even give that in a thought. Like, how do you manage being home with your spouse all day, every day? And I don't think about it like
Negatively.
at all. Like,
Yeah.
I haven't even given it a thought. And that is strange to me because when you're used to somebody being outside of the home for 10, 12, or 14 hours a day for all of your relationship and now they're home all the time, how do I not feel differently about that?
Right.
And so I'm so grateful in that though. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, and it's so weird because somebody said something to me too. Like it must be so weird though. You're used to like going out and working, and now you're home all the time. I've never thought of it negatively. I've just thought like we've never been together 24/7. This is something new in our
Yeah.
relationship that we have to work toward, like work through, and how can we make the most of it? I never thought of it in a negative thing, like oh my gosh, I have to be home all day with him.
Yeah.
I don't think about it like that. Like
No.
I am actually excited. I'm like, okay, Lord, you need to help me find another job and I'm trusting you to do it, but can you wait until after January? You know, type
And he
of thing.
says, okay.
No, we didn't. We don't know what he's saying, right? So we're just continuing to do the next right thing. And I
Yep.
think that's what you should do in your marriage when you're coming together in a new season. But whether your spouse works outside of the home, doesn't work outside of the home, you both work outside of the home, this is a really good time to take a step back and reflect on what are each other's strengths.
Mhm.
And can you sit down and talk to each other about those? Can you look at your spouse and say, hey, I've really thought about this and you're really good at this, and this around the house. And I appreciate it. Or with the kids, or with the job, or making sure the cars have oil changes in it. I didn't even ever think that, getting the tires rotated, getting oil changes. I don't ever have to think about that. Like, what are the things that are done in your daily life that you never have to think about because your spouse does it or fills in the gaps for you? I think that's a good challenge.
Yeah, I think that we've actually been preparing for this moment that we never knew was going to come or how it was going to come. There's so many things I believe in marriage that you have to do so much groundwork and you have to continuously do that groundwork all the time about not being reactive. Like, yes, when she first was home and we tried working together, I could tell we both were starting to posture up in the way that we felt about the situations going on. Like, you're wrong. Like, whatever you're doing right now, you don't know me. You haven't been here. And for her, she's like, I've been doing this professionally for this many years. Like, you don't
You're not
understand.
listening.
You're not listening. You're not part of a team. You're not a good team member, right? It's real easy to posture up on those things in the beginning, but then to quickly say, wait a minute here. I want to collaborate with my spouse and how can I make a change right now to make that better? And I think that's something that we've had to work on for the last 12 to 14 years of our relationship continuously to be able to say, you know what? I'm going to step back a second here because we want each other to win
Yeah.
always. I want Kristy to win over me all the time.
hmm
All the time.
Except for in board games. I do want to beat him.
She
But
does.
and anything else, I do want him to win.
But it's true though. Like I really do. Like I got thinking to myself, like, okay, if I have to change everything that I do, that's going to be more collaborative for her to make this easier on her. I'm willing to do that. And I believe that she feels a lot of the same. And so what we do with that though, with that collaborative humility is that we come together and now we have a willingness, which is really, really hard to have if you're not continuously working on that in your relationship when the hard time comes. And so remind yourself, you guys may not be in this situation today, but you may be in this situation tomorrow, a month from now, a year from now, or 5 years from now. What are you doing now to pour into that foundation to make sure that it's strong for when these things do happen?
I agree. I agree with that. I had a thought in my head and I lost it now.
Disappeared. I
Yeah.
talked too much about it. That's how it goes. But it is important, guys. Working together doesn't really mean that it has to be working on a profession together. It could be working together on many things.
Yeah, I think this is so important to talk about on our podcast, though, too. We received from the last podcast that we did. Our goal when we started this podcast, what, almost 4 years ago now, has it
Oh, it's
been?
all been over 4 years, four
Has
and a half
that
years.
been?
Yeah, four and a
Oh,
half years.
wow. So, our whole goal was when we first initially started it, if you go back and look at that very first episode, whew, it's rough.
It's rough.
But the reason why we started it is because we wanted to make a voice for people that didn't have a voice. Like Christianity, if you came to Christianity late in life, you feel like you're an outsider in the world, but you also feel like an outsider in the Christian community. And then we started talking about blended families in the church, all of those types of things. But we always had a regimen and we always had a structure to it. And this last week, when we pre-recorded that, because we're pre-recording them now, we're not really going live. Maybe that will change in the future, but right now they're going to be pre-recorded. We talked about something that was extremely vulnerable, and to be honest, we were unsure of whether or not we should even do it. But, like, I know I was. I'm like, "I don't know how much why do people care?" You know, people wanna be helped, and we should just focus on helping them. But we wanted to give an update of why the background looked the way it was. Like, why is it different? Like, we have to give, our listeners and we need to be authentic, we need to be vulnerable, and we were unsure, and you never know when you put yourself out there how that's gonna be received. And we have received so much feedback from that last podcast. I have. I don't know if he has, but women are more likely to reach out to each other. But so many people have said that was such a powerful podcast. You guys were so vulnerable, all that stuff. And we're not doing it to get the accolades, but it has caused us to take a step back. And we want to do podcasts now where we're just talking about a subject. We're trying to be as real, authentic as possible. We don't have any points pre talked about. We want it to be raw, authentic feelings and opinions that are coming out that are biblical, aligned with godly think principles. And so I think that is important for everybody to take away from this. Like when you're working together with your spouse, what we're going to try to do is try to help you look beyond your feelings, look beyond your emotions, look beyond the anger and the frustration sometimes. And we have to come on and do this maybe even when we're frustrated. Like last week, we both started getting really emotional and started crying on the podcast, and we're like, trying to like
Reel
suck
it
them
in.
back in,
Yeah.
so we could get through what we were trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's just important. We want you guys to see real, authentic, what's going on in our lives, but also what God wants you to do. And even though it's hard and it's scary right now, our life is scary. You might have something going on in your life that's just scary and uncertain. And the whole point though is God wants you to trust him. And
That's right.
on Sunday, I was getting ready for church and I was just sitting there talking to God while I was getting ready. And I'm just like, I just have such a hard time trusting God. I loved this company so much, and the rug just got pulled under me. And I always am trying to, in my career, make sure I'm like the best performer. So something like that would never happen. And it didn't matter. And I said, I just have a hard time trusting that this isn't going to happen. This isn't going to happen. I'm scared of flying, that the pilot's going to keep the plane in the air and all of this. And the Holy Spirit really spoke to me and said, you don't have to trust anyone. You just need to trust me. And that like seriously pierced my heart on Sunday. And that's what's been giving me peace the last few days is I don't have to trust any job, any boss, any company, any person to not hurt me anymore. I just have to trust God. That's the only thing I have to worry about doing.
That's it.
I said a lot, so it's
Yeah.
your turn to talk.
No, that's all we got. We are actually out of time. So we want to thank you guys so much for being here. Remember, we try to do it in about 15-minute chunks each and every week moving forward, guys. If you want to know the full update, just watch the previous episode, guys. We'll see you next time.
Bye.